Joining us now is Sidney Powell. She has done yeoman's work. As I said, she texted me 3 a.m. today when she was going to bed, and I was getting up, and now she's up with me now. Filed a massive lawsuit in Arizona yesterday. Hey, Sidney, thanks for being with us.
Hey, John, thank you for your support. And Anita is exactly right. One of the things we were trying to accomplish is to get people to realize that Loeffler and Perdue, among other Georgia leadership, should be out there screaming right now for a special session of the legislature and to get the entire voting system fixed now. And it can't be fixed with Dominion machines. There's nothing reliable about them whatsoever. We're going to have to go to real paper ballots, and we're going to have, a real hand count of those ballots.
So, Sidney, what they're saying is, well, we can't do that in a special session because you can't change the rules in the middle of the game. But the game is
Well, they changed them all in the middle of the game last time to make sure they rigged it.
Exactly.
And the legislature can make the rules.
So you want a special session to do this. So basically at the rally yesterday, and by the way, I've been on the air 10 years, Sidney. I've followed everything. I go on the ground. I'm in the middle of a 12-city tour in 12 days in Georgia. I was in Alpharetta, obviously, yesterday. I'm downtown today in Atlanta for the hearing. We'll be going from there. Have you ever seen a movement like this before, ever? 1,500 people out there in Alpharetta cheering on your every word. I mean, they're pissed, and people are, and the phone calls I'm getting day after day, people have had it.
Yes,
Sidney.
They have had it, John. And no, I mean, I was overwhelmed. Frankly, I had no expectation for the event whatsoever, and I mean, I'm just trying to do what I can do to be honest with respect to all the issues. And the pushback that we have been getting is really flabbergasting, except when you realize that there is so much global money behind all of this, and frankly, malevolence to do the kind of evil that we are uncovering more of every day. This isn't the first year this has been done. These machines and algorithms have been used to rig races all over the world for I don't know how many years, at least 15. We know that Clinton used it. We know that Obama used it, I think, in Florida and maybe other places. I mean, we're getting evidence of every manner and means of voter and election fraud you can imagine, but to know now that the voting machines have been rigged, and it's not just Dominion, the same DNA code is in most of the machines that run across the country, maybe not to the extent Dominion did. In fact, I saw a report yesterday that Dominion machines averaged 6% more for Biden than any of the others. But that doesn't mean an algorithm wasn't run in the others also, because they all have that capability, and we're seeing signs of fraud in almost every state across the country.
So, Sidney Powell, did I just hear you say that the Dominion voting machines across the country averaged 6% higher vote count for Biden than the other machines? But
yes.
If one machine is in Massachusetts and the other that you're comparing it to is in Alabama, obviously there's going to be a difference. Were they comparable areas?
Well, the point is that in places where the other machines were used, and sometimes the only state I think that was all Dominion or that mandated all Dominion was the state of Georgia. Some other states, for example, Arizona, only used Dominion in Maricopa County. But the interesting thing is the disparity between the places where Dominion is and all other places. And one of the things we know is from prior use and testimony that Dominion machines can flip 2.7 to 3% of the vote from Trump to Biden easily. I mean, that's kind of what they've run many times before, and that stands to reason that accounts for the 6% up for Biden, where Dominion machines were operating.
Sidney Powell, let me ask you this, and let's start. I'm going to start with Georgia and then go to Arizona. So, in Georgia right now, you filed a 104-page lawsuit. Very detailed. I didn't have a chance to read it. It's very, very comprehensive. Walk us through when you're going to get a hearing, what your expectations are, and the time frame.
Well, the state came in and argued that we had to sue every district, every county board person in the state of Georgia to seek the relief that we wanted. We don't think that's the law. It's not the law. The Georgia Secretary of State bought all the machines for $107 million of taxpayer money in a rushed deal. And, and the governor, of course, also. So we had to do an emergency appeal to the 11th Circuit, and that they granted the expedited review. We've got a brief due tonight in that. And meanwhile, we've also filed in Michigan and Wisconsin and Arizona, and we plan to file in Pennsylvania. We've got multiple other states to cover. One of the things that's important for people to realize is that many down-ballot races were affected by the fraud. They could go in and target specific candidates. I'm very upset that John James didn't join our suit in Michigan. He should never have conceded. And the same is true for Doug Collins. I don't understand it because I'm 99% sure he won his race against Kelly Loeffler. Congressional seats were affected. Leon Benjamin in Virginia, I think, was a victim of it. We should have won probably 6 more Senate seats and probably 10 more House seats. And we're going to keep looking and digging out what we can until we get to everything that should have been won, and probably some governor races too. I mean, it wasn't just the presidential race. Of course, that's the most important right now because of the Electoral College issue. But the others can continue to fight, and we need to find out. We need to examine every race and figure out who really should have won and who perpetrated the fraud. The Department of Justice and the NSA and the DNI should be all over this. I don't understand what's going on other than I know some of our 3-letter agencies are complicit in it, if not behind it. I mean, Venezuela didn't create this software on its own 20 years ago.
Sidney, let me ask you a direct question about evidence. I mean, you've been criticized now in a lot of places in Washington that you've not presented any direct evidence of real voter fraud that somebody can get their arms around and see. How do you respond to that? Do you have any direct evidence that you have seen that is really just like not a dotted line but a straight line, real evidence of voter fraud and how this election was stolen? Do you have any of that?
Yes, we do, and I don't understand why people keep saying no evidence except that they want to make people believe there's no evidence. If you get up in the morning and there's 6 inches of snow on the ground, can you tell it snowed? I mean, that's how stupid it is. Plus, we have direct witnesses who know why it was created, how it was created, watched it being used, was briefed on all its features. Their own online manual tells people they can drag and drop votes into the trash. They put them in this thing called an adjudication file, however many they want to. They can program the computer not to read signatures and therefore reject thousands of ballots, put them in, quote, an adjudication file, and then just trash it all. It's their own admissions prove it. We've got Eric Coomer in a call saying he's got it fixed for Biden. You know, Trump is not going to be president. He's the lead engineer for Dominion. We have the witness who watched it all work. He was in the control room for when Dominion was rigging the elections in Venezuela. Do people really think that what happens everywhere else in the world, with or without CIA help and other nefarious interests, can't happen here? Have we learned nothing in the last 4 years about the lies and extent they'll go to steal and cheat and control the money and power of the world?
So, Sidney, you were saying that you have direct evidence and direct affidavits in your possession that are going to come to light and show that this election was fraudulent and stolen. Is that what I've heard?
Yes, absolutely. And we have evidence from computer experts and mathematical experts and statisticians. You don't just add 350,000 Biden votes all of a sudden at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's like flipping a coin 350,000 times, and it always lands on heads. It doesn't happen. It's a mathematical and statistical impossibility.
So, in your judgment, in the research you've done and what you've filed, how did they manufacture these 350,000 votes for Biden in the middle of the night?
Well, they can just literally make up a number and inject it into the system. But they also had the backup plan of the mail-in ballots or the mail-out ballots, a friend calls them, because they're just, indiscriminately mailed out by the hundreds of thousands to people. And they also had counterfeit ballots. So we have one instance where we've got this big stack of machine-generated ballots with the circle filled in perfectly just for Biden, and the techs could take stacks of those and just repeatedly run them through the machine to document the backup. But the key, when the algorithm broke, when there were so many hundreds of thousands of Trump votes at like 2 o'clock in the morning, remember when all the networks suddenly stopped tallying electoral votes or calling states, no matter, you could have 99% of North Carolina in and they wouldn't call it for President Trump, which was absolutely ridiculous. Yet as soon as the polls close in California, they call it for Biden. We think even California might very well have gone for Trump. And they've been doing this gradually to us over the years. The states they're saying are blue are not blue at all.
Let's get to the truck in Pennsylvania. We had Phil Klein on a little bit earlier, and he said that they've got evidence. You've got an affidavit and a whistleblower who said they drove a truck, a tractor trailer from Bethpage, New York, to Pennsylvania at 3 in the morning, dropped it off, and there were 280,000 ballots in there. Where did those ballots come from? Where's the truck? Why hasn't it been impounded? Are there cameras, GPS? The driver said this. How did ballots get from Bethpage, New York to Pennsylvania?
Well, I would guess they had, massive quantities of the counterfeit ballots or the pre-filled out fake ballots stored in different parts of the country to send them where they were needed in the middle of the night to backfill the system. And the reason they all had to stop counting was because they weren't expecting the overwhelming, we're talking like 800,000 votes or 900,000 votes that Trump had legitimately, that they then had to backfill in the system to try to cover for it with Biden. And that's why those states had to stop counting. Every state that stopped counting is a massive indicator of fraud. But I'm also saying that it went far beyond all the states that had to stop counting. The ones that had to stop counting, it was the Trump landslide was so overwhelming that it broke the algorithm. And they had to stop, and they had to backfill with fake votes and counterfeit ballots.
What about yesterday? You said at the rally in Alpharetta, Sidney Powell with us, by the way, has filed lawsuits in a number of states, most recently Arizona. By the way, Kelly Ward, the Republican Party chairman of Arizona, will be with us, we understand, at the 9 o'clock hour today. Sidney Powell with us now at the rally yesterday. Sidney, you said that you uncovered evidence of counterfeit ballots being shipped to the U.S. from Mexico. Can you elaborate on that, Sidney?
Yes, we have got some video of counterfeit ballots being brought across the border from Mexico, and we also have some evidence that there was a plane load of ballots being flown in from outside the country, and one witness says that has been continuing and will infect the runoff elections in various places.
You've got direct evidence that there were counterfeit ballots printed in Mexico, basically shipped into the U.S.
I don't know where they were printed. I don't know that they were printed in Mexico, but we know some came across the Mexican border into Arizona.
All right, so they came in from Arizona, and you believe that was part of the fraud that perpetrated in this election, trying to swing it to Biden. Is that
definitely
you have evidence of that?
Yes.
You've come under criticism by a number of establishment media in the last 24 hours over this rally in Alpharetta. I was there, by the way, and saying that you were encouraging people not to vote in January 5th. How do you respond to that?
Our point was to put pressure on the legislature, the governor, candidates Perdue and Loeffler, and frankly anybody else that would want an honest election to get out and start screaming about it. Because if we don't fix this now, When in the world are we going to? How can anyone go cast a vote for anyone in a runoff election on a Dominion machine or any other way than a paper ballot that they know is going to be counted for the person they voted for? The magnitude and mass of this fraud would have been incomprehensible to me 8 years ago. It's what we expect in third world countries. Well, if we're going to turn the United States into Venezuela, let's keep voting this way, because that's exactly what is happening.
So what you're saying is, if you don't get change now and you go down the same path, they're going to end up in the same place. Stacey Abrams just had another 950,000 absentee ballots mailed out. So what I'm telling people is, if you don't get change, why do you think it's going to be any different? You're going to go to bed January 5th at midnight, and Purdue and Loeffler are going to be ahead big, and then you're going to wake up and they're going to lose. It's going to be the same thing. Why would it not be the same thing? Tell me what, if you don't change it, what exactly is going to be different?
Exactly. And even if one of them wins, you don't know that that was the will of the people. That's the problem, because the system has been rigged. Mm-hmm. And everybody on both sides of the aisle should be jumping up and down screaming about this. One of the big problems is that probably a number of Republicans have benefited from this too. Just in the end of 2019, Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar and some other Democrats were screaming about it. In 2003 or 6, Carolyn Maloney, a Democrat from New York, was screaming about this and tried to warn everybody not to buy the machines. And they still got bought. So we don't know who all has benefited from it, other than the powers that be either sell or know or blackmail or whatever people to rig the system.
And so this fraud that you're doing these lawsuits on, it covers mail-in ballots, it covers Dominion software, it covers algorithms, it covers counterfeit ballots coming in the middle of the night. I mean, the way you've outlined this, Sidney, this is a vote fraud election stealing scheme on a scale that nobody could have ever imagined. But I think what you've said is that because Trump was winning by such a large margin, that's when the wheels came off their plan, right? Is that
exactly
a fair way of saying it?
Yes. They have done any number of these things for years. But it's because he won in such a humongous landslide, probably the largest vote count in American history, that the wheels did come off and the fraud is being exposed. And people have been paying more attention. You're right. Americans all over the country are absolutely fed up with the corruption in both political parties. And I guarantee you that, it's a lot of places at all different levels of government, local, county, state, wherever. And we need to demand that it be stopped right now.
Well, Sidney, what I think you've helped do here is ignite a movement, because I've never seen more anger amongst voters than I've seen in the past 3 weeks here in Georgia. And what you're saying is, look, people I talked to yesterday at the rally were like, hey, if I'm going to vote for these two senators, I want action. Give me a reason to vote right now. Why should I? So they can just steal it again and I can be made a fool out of again? I mean, that's what people have been saying since I've been here for 3 weeks. And it's the politicians don't want to acknowledge it. So what they do is McConnell's office sends a salvo to Breitbart, then does a hit piece on Lynn Wood. I mean, that's the way the machine works, okay?
Oh, yeah, and Lynn has donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to Republican candidates. The president loves him. He loves the president. I mean, that was just absolutely ridiculous. We even tried to call Senator McConnell last night to explain to him what was going on. And instead, we get this ridiculous hit piece in Breitbart.
Yep.
So just hogwash. I mean, I'm well aware of the fact I'm going to irritate a whole lot of people, but I think they need irritating.
Well, because if not now, when? I think what you've said here, if we don't fix this now, it's just going to continue on. I mean, they figured out how to rig it, but the most compelling thing you've said is, if it was 10,000 votes here, 15,000 votes there, they've done this in the past, it gets under the radar screen. But when they look at Pennsylvania and they're losing by 900,000 votes at 10 o'clock at night, that's when everything went haywire. That's when ballots start getting shipped in from New York and Bethpage in trailers. That's when machines start getting manipulated. Everything goes down. They lock the windows in Philadelphia. They lock the doors. They throw Corey Lewandowski out, even though he had a court order. That's when everything fell apart for them, because it had to be too big to go under the radar screen. Okay, so only got a couple more minutes. What is the pathway? What is the legal pathway right now for Trump to be inaugurated? And is there one?
Oh, yeah, there's definitely one. A number of things can happen. Legislatures need to, set aside any certification of the vote and choose Trump electors. That should happen in every swing state that's an issue, every state where the machines stopped counting in the middle of the night. You realize this is the only time in American history we've stopped counting on election night, except for one county in Florida, Broward County, in Bush versus Gore? I mean, this was the most flagrant, in-your-face, abject, massive voter fraud in the history of the world, other than a country like Venezuela with Hugo Chavez, or Mongolia, or someplace where they do this all the time. That's how in our face they were about all of it.
Sidney, why did they stop counting the ballots? What did that allow them to do? Because we were all there. I think it started about 1 or 2 a.m., about 1 to 4 a.m., where they just stopped counting. I've never seen that. I've covered these forever. I've never seen that. Why did they do that? Why was that the plan? Because it was just not in one county or state. It was in all these states. They just stopped counting. What was the object of that? What were they trying to do?
Well, they were determined not to give Trump 270 electoral votes on election night. That was clear from what the media was doing on all the stations, including Fox. I mean, they were part of this too. It was like a script came out, and they had all agreed that they wouldn't, no way they were going to let Trump get to 270 electoral votes on election night. So the states stopped counting because he had gotten so many hundreds of thousands of votes more than their algorithm could fix. They had to do the things like truck in the fake ballots or stand at the machines and run the same ballots through 50 times until they got the X number of votes they wanted.
Wow. So they stopped
counting
the votes.
It's called backfilling. They had to go in and backfill fraudulent votes for Biden, or insert votes. We've got the machine calculations from, I think it's Michigan, where 20 minutes apart, they inject specifically the same number of Biden votes and Trump votes at like 354,000 x 4, for Biden, and then 124,352 for Trump. A very specific number injected into the system twice, 20 minutes apart.
What are the odds on that happening?
Right. It doesn't.
Infinitesimal.
Yes.
But yet no one wants to ask a question. No media interest in it. Nothing. Zero. Just don't look here. Go away. Let's talk about Biden's fantasy cabinet. That's the frustration. And that's what the frustration you're getting from Georgia, Sidney. I think you saw that yesterday. 1,500 people turned out. They were fired up, cheering on your every word. And McConnell thinks he can have somebody do a hit piece on Lynn Wood, and they're going to do a hit piece on you, and that's going to make it all go away. They don't understand that people in Georgia that we're talking to have had it. They've had it with the whole thing, and they're not going to be taken for granted. And what your message is fix it now so it doesn't happen again on January 5th. Because if you don't fix it, the same thing is going to happen, and you want action. Everybody that I've talked to who said, look, I'm not going to vote on January 5th, I'm like, well, what do Republicans have to do to get you to turn out? They said, action. Do something. Fix this. Make me heard. Otherwise,
Loeffler and Perdue haven't even spoken out for President Trump on this.
Yep.
I mean, what the hell?
Yep. That's
the Republican Party is nowhere to be found on this fraud issue, which leads me to think they're as complicit in it as anybody else. the American people are a hell of a lot smarter than the politicians want to give us credit for, and we are 100% fed up with all of them.
What would be your advice to David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler right now in order to win these 2 seats on January the 5th, Sidney Powell?
Absolutely demand a completely new Senate race on a paper ballot that everybody can trust and bipartisan counting of them in full transparency. And demand a special section of the legislature. There should be a down ballot race on everything all over from the Senate on down in Georgia. Mm-hmm. There really should be. And they could put it off a little longer if they needed to. But it is imperative to get this right. And every public official in Georgia ought to be demanding it now. And every candidate who was on that ballot, at least the top 4 contenders, should be demanding that now. They owe that to the American people. We are entitled to a legal, correct voting system that we're not defrauded from.
Sidney Powell, I want to thank you for all you do. Your lawsuits, they're gaining traction. Sidney Powell saying here in the John Fredericks Show she has direct evidence of and affidavits that are going to be presented on voter fraud in a massive way. From all angles, from counterfeit ballots to truckloads of phony ballots coming in to Pennsylvania from New York. And, we just had Phil Klein on, and I asked him about that truckload again because, it's easy to track. And he said, look, they didn't know that was going to Pennsylvania. They had the ballots ready to go. Maybe it was going to go to Milwaukee. Maybe it was going to go to Florida. We don't know. All we do know is Trump was ahead by 900,000 in Pennsylvania, so they hit the panic button, and that's where they went.
Right. Yeah, they were ready for this. They have been prepared for this for months. They had their legal teams ready to deploy. Mark Elias and the DNC are trying to intervene in all of our lawsuits as if they had any right to do so, which they don't. Mm-hmm. They have been loaded for bear and planned this for a long time.
And you still believe today that on January 20th, President Donald J. Trump is going to put his hand on the Bible?
I do.
Sidney
the American
Powell,
people see this fraud, and we are not going to put up with it.